On today's episode of the College Lacrosse Show, we chat about the All-American list, which came out today, our biggest surprises from round one of the NCAA men's lacrosse tournament, and we preview the 4 quarterfinal games coming up this weekend. A very good episode, very fun, a lot of laughs, and I'm excited for you to listen to it. Let's get right into it. Episode 15 of the College Lacrosse Show. Okay, hello, welcome back. Episode 15 of the College Lacrosse Show. I can't believe it's been 15 episodes. Feels like episode 1 was yesterday, and boy, what a weekend. First round of the tournament done, and a lot of good lacrosse.
Yeah, I'm swimming in it. A lot of lacrosse over the weekend. A lot of great stuff, obviously, in the D1 world, but like the D2 and D3 worlds were also insane. You know, I was sitting there watching. I still have the tab open in my internet browser, and I'm never going to close it. It's the live stats tab from the Maryville Limestone game. I'm just going to keep the tab, this live stats from Limestone's last game ever.
I will remember you.
But I was watching that. I'm watching Dickinson upset Salisbury. You know, I'm watching kids in some of these D2 and D3 games who, like, as the week has gone on, I'm hearing might get calls from PLL teams. Like it's a time of year where kids are really making a name for themselves. Obviously, on a team basis, like there are legends being written. Like that Q's Harvard game is the latest in like the Dome history books. But individual players too are kind of creating a story for themselves or stamping their season. You know, we'll get into games where like what Aiden Carroll did against Duke is like the stuff of legend that goes up there with like what Buccaro did against Yale. Like, you know what I mean? It's, you know, you start having those individual performances where people take over at this time of year. And that's what I love about the playoff games. Yeah,
and this is the College Lacrosse Show, so we'll keep it focused on that, but also one of the most insane finishes you'll ever see to the Rush Thunderbirds game.
Oh my God.
Lacrosse, I get the complaints that there's too many versions of lacrosse, but there's also like all of these awesome versions of lacrosse you get to watch. Okay, my first question, what is more overused, the Freebird remix as a goal song or the bow and arrow celly? Because I've never seen a lot of both.
I think the bow and arrow's got it. I don't get it. I don't get the bow and arrow thing. Like, I don't know. I miss like, you know what I miss? Bring back the corn cob celly. Bring back the stick up to your mouth. Bring back the corn cob celly. Some of them are like OT only, but like throw the glove in the air and shoot it. Like that's a game winner only, probably celly. But I could use a little variety in the cellies. I think the Freebird thing, it's more recent. I think I figured that blew up from like the hockey tournament. But
correct.
I'm also a proponent of players having their own goal songs. High Point used to do that. Some schools do that. Syracuse does that. But I love guys having goal songs. So bring back some of that kind of stuff. I love the individual personality of it.
Well, the guys now are getting fired up with the bow and arrow. They're flying 6. they're just firing them. It's like, what are you, Legolas? Like, what the hell is going on out there?
A hot take and a tip for the production crews. Rather than going right to the goal scorer for his celly, hit the bench mob. Because there are teams out there with like a laundry list of choreographed things that they do together. You got guys getting RKO'd. You got, players holding others back from the field and stuff like that. There's good stuff out there that we're missing.
The best one, which they didn't miss, and the broadcast all over, was Fulton Bayman. For Georgetown, he does like a double. He did basically the CJ Curse. So he does like the double arm, double knee fist pump, and the whole bench just starts doing the same thing. So I appreciate that. Okay, before we get into the games, the All-American list came out today. Inside Lacrosse came out today for sure. When you texted me All-American list, I assumed that's what you were talking about. So that's yeah. I obviously don't have a vote. To me, it looked like a pretty good list. I didn't have too many issues with it. And again, we've become the authority on this issue. To have just a full roster of players on each list, I appreciate it. And they actually mentioned that in the article, which I thought was a subtweet at you and I as the official complainers of bloated tournament or award season. But you had a vote. I'll let you kind of take whatever you want to say, but I thought it was a good list.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good list too. There's places where I voted differently than the team did. For the most part, it's like look, I'm probably going to be off by like a team here or there. Tough decisions for me are always first team goalie was hard. I think Fayak is who I ended up voting for first team, but I think you really do have to consider Fayak and McNaney pretty closely in there. And it was, if you're out there, you're sitting and you're screaming at me that you should have voted for Logan McNaney, like, you're right. And if you're Ohio State fan saying it should be Caleb Fayak, you're also right. Both those guys had first team All-American seasons, but it's what makes like the voting thing so hard. So I thought Fayak being fundamental to like the identity of his team and the way that they play, they play defense based on the way Caleb Fayak saves shots and the shots he warps the way that they scheme games. McNaney's good like all the time, but like I just something about the way Fayak is like, again, like a guy who controls a game completely by himself, like Fayak I thought did for stretches of games this year. I think kind of gets the edge. It's kind of how I do it in other positions where I think it's hard. Like, who kind of controls this game more? Who warps the way the game gets played more versus who's out there and is like super talented and productive, but doesn't maybe dictate the way a game gets played quite as much. CJ Kerr's the only unanimous guy on first team, which I think makes sense in the year we've had. Some years that can be like head scratching where you're like, there's no unanimous first team All-Americans. Or last year, I think Will Coletti was like the only one. And it was like, really? I don't know. Like, there are years where kind of you expect somebody to be, and they wouldn't be. But this year, I thought CJ Kerr makes sense. It's like, he's clearly going to win the Tewaaraton, the best player in America. If you don't put him first team All-American, then you haven't watched a game all year or something like
well,
that.
It's funny, by the way, on that note, that like the other nominees for the Tewaaraton on the broadcast, they're saying like, "Oh, this guy's going to the Tewaaraton dinner." Like they're not even like supposing that it's an option. It's like, oh yeah, this guy got invited to watch CJ win the award.
I was gonna say he gets to be there when CJ Kerr wins the Tewaaraton.
It's a fucking big honor. He doesn't just get to, anyone can go to the dinner. He gets to the dinner's like a fundraiser. It's like the worst part.
I will say on the Tewaaraton thing too, and I think because it's relevant to the All-American conversation, I voted Jackson Eicher as a first-team All-American at attack. I think some people might take issue with him as first-team attack. Some people kind of took issue with him as a Tewaaraton finalist, saying his production, while it's like obviously prodigious, guy's got a zillion points, he doesn't play the schedule necessarily. It's just like the knock on Army is the same as the knock on him individually. He doesn't play the schedule that like Kirst or Sam King or other guys played or guys who got left out. Like, I don't think Joey Spallina is a Tewaaraton finalist. Joey has a ton of points and plays a harder schedule to get those points, that kind of thing. So I feel like that'll be something where people kind of stick on it, is like, Jackson Eicher being there. I think if you watched Army play, and this is why you can't just do this like sort by points and the first three guys are the first teamers and the second three guys are the second teamers kind of thing. Like, you got to watch a guy plays. He changes the way a game gets played if you're defending Army. Like, he's a game warping player. So to me, I had him as first team. But there aren't too many, I guess, guys where it was like the biggest departure, I think, from where guys started versus where guys maybe ended is like Ben Ware finishes the season as an honorable mention guy. Matt Traynor finishes the season as an honorable mention guy. Those are guys who were teamers, I think, if you go to preseason stuff and things like that. Like, it's interesting.
Interestingly, I did that. I went back and looked at the Inside Lacrosse list. So four players from the first team, the preseason first team, ended on the postseason first team. That was Kirst, McAdory, McGuire, and Light. And unless they put and King, so five, I guess. Kirst, King, McAdory, McGuire, Light. And then on the second team, there's three more guys that finished, I think. I had three more that finished either on the first or second team, and that was Kavanaugh, Mackesy, and it was...
I'm sure Ben Ramsey was first team preseason.
Yeah, Ben Ramsey. So, Ben Ramsey was first team, and then Pilot was... AJ Pilot was preseason second team, I think, finished preseason second team. Notably, neither of the goalies were in there. Of the 6 preseason first and second team middies, I think only one made postseason first and second team, and that's a little bit unfair because Weishauer played attack, which is just a way more loaded spot, and was listed properly as an attackman. The other interesting thing is just this like sort of conference thing we had this year where Traynor is the offensive player of the year in the Big Ten, and he deserved it. I don't think I didn't have a huge issue with that, and doesn't make any of the first three teams. If you want to talk about schedules, talk about just having to go up against those Big Ten defenses and goalies all year. And then the other really interesting thing to me is the goaltending. Neither of the first two preseason goalies made postseason goalie. I wrote an article in the preseason about how for the last 2 years, Entenmann's just had the throne and how that's pretty unusual. And that turned out to be true. Like, it's hard. There's so many things that go into goaltending. Really speaks to like how dominant Liam Entenmann was, I think, that he was just the undisputed king for 2 years.
Yeah, to like wire to wire be like, no, it's me. Like I'm the best for 2 years. It's hard as a goalie to kind of stay at that level. And it's like I think Emmett Carroll was preseason first team, finished honorable mention. There's another like interesting conversation to be had around this sometimes, which is like how much does your team success impact your individual winning of something like All-Americans? Matt Collison, I think, is down in honorable mention.
Lavelle, yeah.
Yeah, Lavelle and Carroll are both down there.
Scott Smith. Yep.
Yeah, Scott Smith. I thought Charlie Cave at Brown was awesome this year. I know people might not have tuned into a ton of Brown games, but man, is he good. So, like, if your team kind of has a mediocre year, do they knock you down? Do you get, do voters kind of, whether we think about it or not, consider that, or does it like affect the way we think about you? Does it bias us as we think about you as a player? Like Ryan Bell was a freak this year when people probably didn't watch Providence a ton. He's an honorable mention All-American.
Yeah, I think it certainly plays a part. The question is whether it's fair or not. I think I don't think you can argue that it plays a part. And the other thing is like one of the not issues necessarily because it's not that big a deal. But one of the things about our sport is that there's not a lot of ways to quantify good defensive players. So yeah, your team defense and playing on TV is going to have a huge impact. And for some of these guys, like a Lavelle or a Smith, they, as far as I could tell, they didn't really get beat much this year at all. They pretty much played up to their normal strengths, but because the team struggled a little bit more, maybe their matchups were scoring, even if it wasn't against them. You have to have those like defensive players have to have something you can put on like a graphic. Like, oh, this guy held this guy to the 0 goals, right? And same with like the goaltenders. So, it just also goes to show like the reason I wanted to say that part too about the preseason list is just to kind of highlight sort of what an unusual year this was. Like, Willem Firth, first team All-American, he wasn't even the first team. He didn't win Ivy Midfielder of the Year, and that was a guy on his team. Like, it's just this year was tons of parity. Very relatively few true superstars outside of the guy who's having one of the best years of all time. And just kind of something interesting to think about. I haven't done it, but I would imagine if we look back on last year's, there would be a little bit more continuity between the preseason and the first. We knew it was O'Neill, Schellenberger, PCAV. All these guys were going to be there. Entenmann, all that stuff.
I think it's also interesting and it's fun to do now because we said it in the preseason and we kind of all knew like this was going to happen, but like we did the preseason top 50 for IL, like no Maryland guys on the preseason All-American list. And now you get Schaller as a first team All-American. You get Kolar as a second team. You got McNaney. You got McDonald. That's just like the teamers. You know what I mean? Spanos, honorable mention. Keegan, honorable mention. Like, all of a sudden, they're a team that had nothing in the preseason, and now they've got dudes up and down the All-American list because it's just like it's how Maryland does it.
I mean, Schaller might legit win the Schmeisser. Like he
has a claim for the Schmeiser for sure.
I think it's close.
Yeah, and I would say on like the team success thing and like quantifying defense thing, it becomes a struggle because like, look, nobody on Loyola was going to win an All-American award this year or an All-American award this year. But, like, shout out to Lax Reference and the crew over there. They keep a defensive EGA stat, which is kind of the way they try and quantify individual performances. Like, how much did your performance impact the results of a game? And they do that over the course of a season to give a statistical Tewaaraton for offense and for defense. For basically the entire year, the statistical Tewaaraton for defense was going to Levi Virch. The guy finishing second was Remy Reynolds at Loyola. He was an awesome pull this year. And look, Loyola lost their first 9 games and just had one of their worst seasons probably ever. We knew they were going to have a hard time this year. They graduated a ton, but you lose, everyone tunes out on Loyola. You lose the opportunity to honor a defenseman like that because number one, the team was really struggling. And number two, we really don't have a great way to quantify defensive performance still in a way that's you can put it on TV.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is the TV part is interesting. If you play on TV more, you're gonna get watched more. I could tell you, I did not watch a lot of CAA this year, and I do this for my job, and I do a podcast that I do work as hard as I can to put in as much effort in. I did not watch. I dusted off my Flow Live Sports to watch Towson film before their playoff game. And same with actually even harder is the Big East on CBS Sports because there's no on demand. You can't go find them anywhere.
Yeah, you can't go find them after.
Watch them on TV. So that plays a part too. And I think that's true for defenders is you have to play really well on TV. Remember when Ament kind of tore up Fake?
Chris Fake.
Yeah. Everyone watched that game. If that game was on Flow Live, it would not have been the same thing. Okay, let's talk about some surprises for the weekend. I'll lead us off because there's one that is just overwhelming to me as the most surprising thing. I can't believe Notre Dame scored 15 on Ohio State. The fact that they won, not that surprising. The fact that they won by a lot, pretty surprising. I can't believe they got to 15.
Yeah, I will say as I started kind of looking at this game. But I was watching it, and it's everything about my mind was you're going to be wrong about this. But when I think Chris Kavanaugh scores to make it 4-3, and that's after Ohio State, I think, had gone up 3-1. Notre Dame runs off a few in a row. I think Chris Kavanaugh makes it 4-3. And it's one of those Kavanaugh, juice goal moments.
Yeah.
When he scored it, I was they're winning the game. Yeah. I think it was still the first quarter. I was they're winning the game. That might as well be the game winner. In that moment, it was Notre Dame. You could tell from the last man on the roster, they felt like they could do no wrong from that point on, and they were just we've got it figured out. We've got the formula. We're going to be okay. So the feeling around that game, I thought was interesting because I haven't felt that way when somebody's played Ohio State all year. Ohio State's, as we keep calling it, their formula all year is they control the hell out of every game they play in. Yeah. They own the pace, they own the way the 6v6 gets played, everything about it they dictate, and they just couldn't do it to Notre Dame. It was unbelievable to see them take control of the game.
And Fyock made 15 saves, Dan. Notre Dame put more shots, 30 on goal than Ohio State took in the game total, and I was trying to kind of find a way to cut it for social this week, but I said you cannot give the Juice Notre Dame ride back goal, and Ohio State gave him 2 or 3, and it was over. It was so over from there. And I had that in my notes. You talk about that 4-3 goal. If you have kids, turn the volume down in the car. I wrote Kavanaugh 4th ND goal is so fucking nasty on BBB. That's my scientific approach to that one.
Sometimes there's a goal where it shakes the stadium, and that was one where you just man, that is a first round uppercut. That was Rocky IV. The Russian is cut. He's not a machine. He's a man. We can beat him. And it was all right. They smelled blood, and that was that. And I think you mentioned Fyock. Richard Daly, I think, had 15 saves.
15 as well. Yeah.
And sure that's a guy who didn't get a sniff of All-American or anything like that, but. He has been really good for them this year. And, I think hand up to me, I did not think Notre Dame was going to win this game. I thought them being without Matt Jeffrey changes the way they attack from the midfield. It makes them more one-dimensional from the midfield in the sense that it's all right, everybody just stop Faison and we'll be okay. But, man, if they can lose Matt Jeffrey and hang 15 on Ohio State, the two-time defending champs all of a sudden are a team that, looks like they could beat anybody.
Yeah, and I wrote before, I thought unassisted goals was going to be a big key to the game, and that's why I thought Ohio State was going to win. I thought they were going to win that battle. Ohio State's rope is very good. Notre Dame, everyone knows Ramsey. I thought Ohio State could get after those second, third guys because that's really what Ohio State's been excelling at all year is those unassisted goals. Part of it was Richard Daly, but Notre Dame dominated that stat 7-2. I mean, Ohio State only had 2 players score in this game. Marnier had 4, including 2 basically from the restraining line, or at least 1 from the restraining line, which, by the way, was another theme of the week. We saw like 6 goals from the restraining line. Merklinger had one in the Richmond game. There was
guest to tie it in the Harvard Hughes game, I think, was from like midfield.
Yep. And then the one in the end of the first half against Duke, because I was watching the game and Georgetown scores with like 8 seconds left, and then I start pressing the plus 15 second thing to go to the second. I'm like, wait, when did they score? And I missed it. But yeah, I think the unassisted goals were huge. And then late in the game, there's like 3 possessions in the span of 6 or 7 minutes where Light just took someone's lunch, just check, boop, on the ground, go the other way. Then Donovan did it. Then Ramsey did it. And it's like, okay, well, that's why, these guys are 3 good parts of one of the best defenses we've ever seen in Notre Dame the last few years. And their stars came out. I thought, I haven't watched every single Notre Dame game, but I thought Will Donovan was, that had to have been his best play of the game. And then
he's awesome. He's awesome. Both Donovan and Light are like when you're coaching like youth defenders and it's like their first time like carrying a pole around, they want to just like swing it at everything in sight and just like throw all kinds of checks and stuff like that. They're the tape you show kids, be like, you don't need to throw any checks, really. Like, the clip that's kind of viral of Sean Light that's gotten shared a bunch of him getting a caused turnover. He doesn't even really throw a check in the clip. He just kind of keeps his stick where it's meant to be and is like in the guy's pocket the whole time. And eventually, like, the ball just kind of comes out on its own. Like, the attackman will do the work for you if you do everything right. So, like, these 2 guys they have very quiet sticks and everything about them is like, again, like a do your job. I wrote a little bit about Donovan because he'll be in a pro draft class next year, but like, he's not out there going to be throwing like rusty gates and like giant over the head checks and like pulling up for, winning like cat and mouse sub games to like, so he can shoot from 18 yards. Like, he's just going to guard his guy and win his matchup, and he's going to win every ground ball from the wing. And it's very Notre Dame-ish. It's very, very Notre Dame-ish.
Yeah. Speaking of very Notre Dame-ish, in that ACC semifinal loss, I actually kind of forgot about this. I was doing some work on another story. Corgan benched Taylor in that game for a bad penalty, and that was this playoff game was the best Taylor has looked all year. That was message received, joke's over, it's playoff time. He was awesome. And then the only last thing I'd say, I'm saying this with the utmost respect, Corgan gets a ridiculous leash with the referees. It's insane. If any other coach did that, they would get flagged. It is ridiculous how long of a leash he gets.
He gets a very long. I had mentioned on social this weekend, and it was from when I was watching. Honestly, when I had one of the D3 games on, because you get some electric crowd mics in those games sometimes. But I won't say who the school is, but I will. Why not? I was watching RPI and Wesleyan, and I think it was the RPI fans who were like just letting the referees have it. Like It was like every call that didn't go their way was you're out of your league, like just like aggressive kind of stuff. And I was like, man, like this, when I listen to these games, I'm like, well, this is why we have a ref shortage. And somebody replied to me and they were like, if you mic'd Corrigan from start to finish of a game and just listened to it and it was made public, he'd never coach again. I was like, all right. I mean, like, I can't read lips and I don't know everything he says, but like, yeah, I would agree. He's definitely in the referee's ear from like the opening face-off, like right away.
If you're a Notre Dame fan listening to this, you're probably saying like, oh, he's a legend. He's this, he's that. Yeah, no kidding. Like, and if you get away with it, sure. I think that probably helps them in these games. I think they get calls.
Tierney is a long leash too. Like,
and also, like, I get frustrated when coaches complain about other coaches being on the field because they all do it. But Corgan is like way out there all the time. He's like 10, 15 feet. Yeah, he really is. So, hey, he's a legend, man. I'm saying I've met Coach Corgan. He's a wonderful person, and I'm just saying.
I was gonna say he has the leash because he's earned it, because he's been doing it this long and he is who he is.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the first year coach at an A10 school or something and do that, like, you know, if Crawley is doing that, and I love Crawley, but if he's out there doing that, he's getting flagged. Like,
right,
you know, you're not Kevin Corgan yet.
right. Yeah. So, what's your? I feel like we covered that one pretty good. What's your takeaway?
Surprise. My next kind of surprise game. I know the final score wasn't close, but Cornell and Albany. I was surprised at how well Albany hung around, I guess, in that game.
Me too.
And I was kind of surprised at the way in which they did it. Like when you're doing Cornell, everyone's like, we got to figure out how to stop CJ. We got to try and limit CJ. And you know, there were moments where Albany was like, they clearly wanted to try and do that, but they were doing it in ways that kind of didn't involve CJ. They were like, let's face guard Goldstein for a little while. And that's like, let's do this and that. And it's like, you know, the Cornell offense is like this well-oiled machine, and the main cog in it is CJ. And there were moments where Albany was like, what if we break all the other cogs and see if that just kind of turns CJ Kirstoff? And I thought for the first half, honestly, like I was like, man, like it's kind of just like junk, but it's working. Like it's clearly bothering them, and they varied it enough, and they kind of gave them enough different looks that, you know, Cornell looked uncomfortable against it and sometimes couldn't finish. And then from there, you know, I think you just kind of hope like maybe Silas Richmond scores a bunch, maybe Colton Marquis scores a bunch, maybe, you know, whoever, Doherty or whoever else there is like gonna pile up some goals and keep us in this. And then like ultimately, obviously in the second half, like Cornell just kind of found a rhythm, and once they get going, they get going. But I think I had a surprise in the approach that Albany took of like the idea of like, hey, we'll shut Goldstein off and see what they think, because I can't imagine like Cornell's going to prepare for a lot, but are they walking out of that field prepared for a Goldstein shutoff? Like maybe not. Maybe that's not something they even think about. So a little surprised by like that as a tactic, but not like in a way where I'm like surprised, like why would you even try that? But surprised, like, oh, I didn't even think of that as like something that I would entertain doing.
Yeah, it was smart. I think the one thing it helped was like Cornell is so good when they just dodge and then Goldstein just whips it. They just whip it through X. So I kind of limited that. It turned their guys around. The problem is when you say, let's break the other cogs and make CJ be great, it's like, well, he's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
And I said this, I think, on the show last week when I was at the Princeton Ivy League tournament game, the fourth quarter, it was like CJ. And I felt like kind of like in the third quarter of this one, that's kind of what happened too. It was like, okay, this is getting a little late. Like, you know, this is starting to get a little hairy. You know, let's hit the 15 button. And he was relentless again. We don't need to cover all the stat stuff, but he's getting pretty close here to the big records. Yeah. And yeah, Albany looked good. And I think Cornell was not lucky, but you have to have all parts of your team playing well this time of year, and their defense was outstanding. Jason Singer on Richmond did an incredible job, and I thought it was impressive too that Richmond gets that first one on like the scoop shot, and when you're guarding someone who like is known to hit circus shots and he goes and hits one, you're kind of like, oh shit, you know, like maybe it's one of those days. He settled right in. He was incredible. All day long. But yeah, no, Albany played really well, and coming off short rest too. The play-in game is really a disadvantage. Like there's not a good solution to it because you know, I don't think anyone wants fewer AQ teams in there. But boy, is it a tall task, even when you host that game like Albany did. But yeah, no, I agree. Let me go to my next surprise here. I'll go with the margin of victory in the Georgetown Duke game. Georgetown, that wasn't even as wide as the score suggested. Georgetown dominated that game pretty much from Jump Street.
I think they're averaging 18 goals a game over the last like month, over their last like 4 or 5 games or something like that. Like, yeah. Basically, since they had the ugliest game of all time against Denver, since they played a Denver game from 1997, like then it's been nothing but fireballs from them. And obviously, I kind of mentioned at the top, but look, Aiden Carroll, man,
sick.
Like, unbelievable. To rip off 6 in a row is just like where nobody can do anything about it, and the whole building knows it's happening. I thought was incredible, and it's not like he was like volume shooting on the day. Like he shot I think he shot a little over 40%. He took like 13, 14 shots. Like he was playing within kind of what they do. It just for that big stretch of game, what they do became like give it to number 12. Give it to number 12 and just let him take heat check shots. And I didn't see Duke with an answer for it, which is not something I kind of anticipated. We talked about how athletic they can be in the defense, how like they have a rope unit full of mutants. Like they're, you'd think they'd be able to solve this one kid's mega hot. Can you just cool him off? And they couldn't with all the weapons they have on defense. They couldn't.
Yeah, I think passing for one thing has been the way to beat that Duke defense all year, and Georgetown had a bunch of just great passes. Like they threw a bunch into the crease where the guy wasn't really wasn't really open, but they backdoored a lot of guys. They kept hitting those skip passes. Duke would get like really tight off the ball, and they'd skip a pass through. And then the other thing I thought was interesting was they went at the non-Johnson long sticks more than the short sticks. They were not afraid, and I think I'm curious to what extent that was just flow of the game and guys going when they had the chance to go, or whether that was actually strategy. Either way, it paid off. Their OC, John Hogan, played with my brother at Cornell. I know him. He's a very smart guy. Boy, what a job he's done recently. They play good offense. And then the other thing is, I've talked a few times about last year how Georgetown had like 7 players that they had run out there in different combinations of 6. The 2-line thing was super helpful for them now. Like they're getting some legit juice, and Dudemain's out there playing well. He went to my high school. I played for the same junior A team. I watched him play a ton of box. I'm not surprised whatsoever that he's playing well, but it's like, who's this 6'2" senior on the field? Like, this guy's awesome.
And he's a load too. He's a tough cover. I know he didn't. I don't think he scored. I don't think he had a point in the game, but like he's been playing really well. He had an awesome Big East tournament, and I think I was about to say, they got obviously a ton from Carroll, but like they got multiple goals from 3 other guys, and then Joe Caesar finds one too. But like if they play this weekend and Dudemain has a hat trick, it's not going to like stun anybody, even though he didn't score against Duke. So it is different, like you said, from last year in that regard of like where they basically ran 6-7 guys up there, and you kind of knew what it was going to be. Like they've got better supporting cast, or they've figured that out, I think, as we've gotten to like conference play in the Big East tournament.
Okay, 2 more notes on this game. One, the black jerseys for Georgetown, sick. Enjoyed those. 2, if you have kids in the car, turn down the volume again. What the fuck is Georgetown doing at the end of the game? They just kept shooting the ball. It's like, guys, stop shooting the ball. You're winning faceoffs. Like, just run out the clock.
Be who you are.
They did everything they could to ruin to blow the game. It's like, guys, what are you doing? Just run it out. Hold on to the ball.
Never. Be who you are.
Yeah, the 10-man shooting thing has just it's just out of control. I guess both ways. Like, certain teams don't realize that other teams are just going to shoot it on them, and then certain teams just can't help themselves. They just kept pulling up. I just think of that old, like, yeet.
The
old
net just looks so big.
I know. I was like, guys.
It's right there.
Stop. Pass to your teammates.
I'll give you one more surprise. Another surprise for me is that Syracuse won.
Yes.
That they won their game. Down 8-3 at the half, and I was like, I was just letting one hot take go after another on Socialist. That first half was going on, like sitting there, like saying out loud, like, surely this won't come back to bite me. This game can't possibly change. But man, being down 8-3 and winning a game 13-12 in overtime, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I immediately thought of, as it was happening, the conversation we had, like, is the non-releasable penalty bad? Should we get rid of it? And I was like, well, Jerry Burns on your side right now for sure. I was calling this as it was going on late, as it was like the game was kind of that, there's the sequence where Syracuse scores 3 times in a single penalty. It becomes kind of the John Mullen game after a while. Like you don't do that on man up in that penalty unless Johnny Mullen is just unbeatable facing off. And he was unbeatable facing off in that game. Like that comeback doesn't happen without him. Like it just doesn't work. So I thought his game was incredible. And then like we talked about it early in the season, and I think we said it around ACC play too, but Syracuse fouls so much, so much. And like in the first half, it looked like they were coming unglued. I think it was, I can't remember what the score was when it happened. It was probably like 5-1, but they had that sequence where it was like they were having a contest to see who could draw the most flags.
Also, they got bailed out there. They gave 2 to Kaczynski and 1 to Figueres. It was for sure should have been 1 Kaczynski, 1 Dwan, 1. Yeah. Like they absolutely made it didn't. I think Harvard scored anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But they got bailed out there.
Yeah, like Dwan slashed the guy in the back. I think it was Kaczynski who dragged the guy to the ground. Like it was like what the hell is happening? And I was like, you can't. I believe you cannot win a national championship if that's part of who you are. Like you can't win. You can't win big games that way. The only team to ever do it was Miami football in the 80s. And, like, nobody else has successfully fouled that much and still won a national championship.
And the bad boys Pistons, too. I wrote an article yesterday called How the Power Play Saved Syracuse's Season. It's about all this interesting stuff they're doing on their power play. And you should certainly go read it at Lacrosse Culture Daily. And then I looked on their stats page, and there's like a part where you could see what they've done, what their opponent's done. They have like one of the best power plays in the country. They've only scored like 3 more power play goals than their opponents. I'm like, how is that possible? How many fucking times you guys been man down this year?
It's just it's so much man down lacrosse. And like, another thing I had said, and I wonder if teams start doing it, but twice now, Harvard has had defensive sequences where, and if I'm another team and I watch both these Harvard Hughes games, I'm absolutely trying this. They just throw a shorty on Hiltz, and as soon as Hiltz sees it, this is how I said it on social, he cannot help himself. Like, he's like, I have to attack this. I'm going to get topside. I'm going to try and do something. And like, most of the time it results in a bad pass or a turnover. He did it like 4 times the first time they played. I saw it at least 2 or 3 times against Harvard in this game. And it was just, honestly, it felt like it was only because they shorted him. And he just like got in his own head about being disrespected by the matchup or whatever. But like, I would wonder if you would try it again. Honestly, he scores the game winner, so he's the hero. His game up until scoring the game winner was not good. He did not have his best day in that one. So I would wonder if I'm, a DC getting ready to play Q's, do I try a shorty on Hiltz here or there and see if he does the work for me? See if I can just get a turnover out of him? I don't know. I'd give it a try.
It'd definitely be on their list, I would say. Most coaches have like a little box on their game sheet that'll just have like options for worst case scenario. It'll definitely be one of those options. Just going through a few of my Harvard Syracuse notes. First of all, I got a text from my friend at 5:43 that said, "My God, Cuse looks awful." That friend is you, Dan Arestia. That shows exactly where you're at with that game.
I couldn't believe they looked so bad. They couldn't do anything right. They couldn't clear. Their offense looked like shit. They're fouling like crazy on defense. I was like, this team, I could not believe what I was seeing. Ultimately, and this is kind of what bailed them out in the end, but I was like, your head coach is Gary Gate, who was like one of the most like poised in a game, like cool under pressure kind of dudes ever. And you look like the opposite. And ultimately, it ended up being kind of what they turned into. Like, they were able to kind of manage it in the second half and get into the game. But, like, I couldn't believe how much that happened. And I also, like, Harvard took a lot of fouls in the second half of that game.
Harvard came unglued. This was a collapse by Harvard, for sure.
There were a lot of fouls in this game in general. Syracuse committing a bunch early, Harvard committing a bunch late. And I did find myself wondering if the nature of this game early and the nature of cues early, particularly like that sequence where, like we talked about, where it was just like flags everywhere, they're just hacking, grabbing dudes. Like, I'm sure at some point the refs get together and be like, let's make sure we keep control of this game here, because it looked like it was gonna get a little too rough there for a little while.
Yep.
And I wonder if that honestly impacted some of those calls late. Harvard definitely committed a lot of actual fouls late. They also probably got hit with a couple of bad ones. Hughes probably might have gotten hit with a bad one or two late, but I did wonder if the nature of like the fouling that happened early in that game resulted in the second half having a lot of more penalties thrown than maybe we would have seen otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. The one on King, I think, was probably not a great call. Depending how you see things. And then the last thing I had in my notes was McCool made a save out of the halftime, and then two more big ones in the third quarter to keep it 8-2 and then just kind of keep it around there. Those are really important, I think. Not a good day for him overall. For whatever reason, Harvard this year has kind of been his bugaboo. I think, honestly, part of it might be that he doesn't see any rubber. Harvard never has the ball. Syracuse, when you look at the clears, Syracuse cleared it like 10 times in this game. Between the faceoffs and Harvard scoring, Cuse didn't really ever stop them. They just always had the ball. And the biggest takeaway from the weekend is the faceoff. The teams that couldn't face off just had no chance. And Harvard came in as the 70th best face-off team. That'll probably even worse today. They had no shot. You have no chance winning. Well, I shouldn't say that, because they did have a chance.
Yeah.
But it just shows you it shows you late in the game how much of an advantage it is for Cuse. You got the overtime one. Harvard never sees it in OT. I had Harvard had a simple transfer turnover in the fourth quarter, 12 minutes left. You have to basically be perfect with the face-off differential the way it was. And by the way, Jerry Ragney's coming at me saying that I was scapegoating the face-off. It's actually not what I was doing. I was making a joke based on his joke. I was just saying if you can't face off, you don't have a chance. But I'm not I like the face-off. I think the face-off rules are in a great spot right now. I'm not team let's pull it out of the goal. I like the face-offs. I'm a friend of the community. And he's just I'm not scapegoating anybody. Just kidding. Okay, let's we've been going for a while here, so let's jump into this weekend's games. I think we'll just go by day here. So Saturday, Hempstead, Sunday, Annapolis is my understanding. We'll start with my Cornell Big Red taking on actually my roommate Ryan Lanchbury, the I think previous all-time leading scorer at Richmond. I think Dalton Young might have got there, but Spiders making their first trip to the quarterfinals. Haven't talked about that much. We'll get some of that in here, and Cornell looking to keep going.
Yeah, I think this is the most exciting game of the weekend when you consider the way the regular season matchup went. This was a regular season game where Richmond was up 6-1 in this game. I feel like right now, if you're going to beat Cornell, you need to put them in unfamiliar situations or make them deal with things they haven't dealt with before, because they play every game from in front. They play every game knowing their offense is stacked and all this, they have all that confidence. Getting out to that kind of early lead for Richmond again, if they can jump on Cornell again, man, would that make a difference and force Cornell to kind of, again, just experience playing from behind for a while. What makes that hard is that Jack Cascadden is awesome and has been really good for Cornell this year. And even in that first game where Richmond was up 6-1, Jack Cascadden was awesome in that game. He went 70% against Richmond in the regular season. So you know that if you want to try and jump on them early, that you're probably going to have to do it despite not winning faceoffs. I think the Richmond defense is where you kind of are the obvious place to look for analysis, because that's who your strength is, with Vigu, with Hunter Smith, with Dunham, and trying to figure out how can these guys do what nobody else has done and try and screw this Cornell offense up. I will say Richmond, the fact that they play defense, as you said before, they play mean, they beat you up, they play physical with you. It is a way you can kind of try and impact the way a player's feeling mentally and see if you can kind of disrupt Cornell that way. But it's tough to pick against the Big Red right now. As you said, Richmond, awesome story. This is a quarterfinal game for them. I'm going to be there. I'm going to Hempstead this weekend to see these two games. So I'm excited to see these two teams in person. Or I guess I saw Cornell in person earlier this year, but I haven't seen Richmond in person this year. I'm pumped to see them. I feel like when I look at individual matchups, I can find enough where I like Richmond's chances to hang around. I don't know about win the game, but hang around. And I think on the offensive end, like Lucas Littlejohn is a goal scoring freak who's like just going to find a place he can score from and score from it. He is just a bitch to cover. Like he just looks like the least fun attackman to guard of all time. Not because he's like a crazy dodger, just because he's like he just Houdinis you all the time. Turn your head for a second, he's just gone. He's somewhere else now. So Cornell's team defense, I think, is a challenge for them, but I as much as I'm just like, maybe Hunter Smith does okay with CJ Kurz. Maybe Mitchell Dunham does okay with Ryan Goldstein, or like flip-flop those matchups however you want. Like, I sooner or later, it's been Cornell's strength all year. They just find places where they have a heavyweight edge in a matchup, and then they break you with it.
Well, that's the hard part is you have to have someone who can really cover on the ball on long. And that that's really been the strength of Cornell's offense is you have guys who are elite off-ball players like CJ, who's still obviously an elite dodging presence, and Mikey Long for a Dodger is a very good shooter, kind of the total package guys. And you have the classic X-Man in Goldstein, which is kind of a dying breed, actually. He really is like the most traditional X-Man probably left in the tournament. I guess I'd have to think about that a little bit. But the other thing I noticed against in the Richmond UNC game is they could shoot it. Like I thought Creo's goal was like the turning point in that game. It's like, all right, we've had kind of some issues. We've had to battle for scoring. I'm just going to take it down the alley and rope one. Olsen ropes it. Merklinger can shoot it. They got a lot of guys who can really hose it, and I think Joe Sheridan is one of the more underrated guys I've seen this year. He's really good, number 7, the midi. And then I liked Tommy Stull, too. I think Tommy Stull, the LSM, he made some big plays on the face-off game, just in general. And, he's solid for Richmond. I think if you're the Spiders, you can't have a disastrous first quarter because, the score won't be 3-0, it'll be 8-0, and you just can't. I think Richmond has to keep this thing close. They looked a little like playoffy rattled in that first quarter.
They did not.
Carolina wasn't able to make them pay, mostly because of Vigu in the goal. He was special. The anatomy of an upset begins in the goal. Typically, I would expect that one to be true here as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I think if they have a start like they had against Carolina, where it was like the clear was bad, they couldn't even they didn't run offense in the first quarter really. Like if that happens, like they're going to be in trouble. I'm glad you mentioned Creo. Like I know he's not like a leading scorer for them or anything, but to me, his style of play is like a really good representation for how Richmond has been this year. Like, Creo, I think, is listed at 5'8", 175. He's 175 holding 20-pound weights. Like, he's not that big of a guy, but he plays like somebody who's 6'2", 210. You know what I mean?
And he shoots it like someone who's 6'2", 210, yeah.
Yeah, and like that's kind of how Richmond, I think, is. You know what I mean? Like, A10 team, but they are not scared of you, man. They're ready to fight you. They want a piece. They're going to show up want a piece. They don't care that you're Cornell. Like, they're going to say, come at me, bro. So... it can be dangerous sometimes to play that way, but man, that's who they are. And it's like, you see it in Creo's game, you see it in their defense's game. I think Richmond playing their personality is something you need to have if you're playing a team like Cornell. I will say, I'm not like rooting for it to happen against Richmond in particular, but I feel like we haven't had like Cornell is tied and there's 30 seconds left or 20 seconds left and they have the ball and we're coming out of a TV timeout and 15's picking it up. I don't think we've had one of those this year. And I almost feel like if there's something missing from CJ Kerr's season this year, it's one of those. You know what I mean? Like the break the other team's heart.
A Heisman moment. So
the Heisman moment. Like, he doesn't need a Tewaaraton moment. He's winning the Tewaaraton.
Yeah.
But like, if there was a case to be made that there's something he hasn't done this year, he hasn't done that yet. And they haven't had to have him do it yet. But like, I wonder if we get one of those. This is the time of year where you want to see him get one of those, obviously. But I hope we kind of have the Cornell gets to have that moment sooner or later where it's like, you need something heroic. They haven't needed something heroic at that many times this year.
Pretty much since the Richmond game, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to see him do something heroic. Maybe you want to say the Penn State game, they needed some special stuff happening there too, but
they never really got once that game went south, Penn State just kept winning the faceoffs. It kind of Yeah. The other thing to watch for both teams, I guess, but I think more so for Richmond, considering their first time in the quarterfinals, this is going to be a massive crowd because the 4 teams are Cuse, Princeton, Cornell, and Richmond. Richmond, I can say anecdotally, every Richmond alum is going to this game. Cornell, Cornell, Princeton alum are in New York City, and then Cuse is obviously in New York as well. And then when you look at the other side on Sunday, you have Maryland versus Georgetown in Annapolis, and then Notre Dame fans will travel to the moon, and so will Penn State fans. So from an attendance point of view, this is an unreal turnout or turn of events. And Richmond's going to have to manage that. If there's 25,000 people there on Saturday, I wouldn't be that surprised. I don't know what Hofstra seats, but it seats a lot. And it also, that place feels like intense. It kind of feels like a bowl in there. And it can get hot, too. It can get really hot.
It gets hot there. You sit right on top of the field there. And the 4 teams that are there, a lot of Long Island kids on these teams, to say nothing of where the schools themselves are located. Sure. Just a ton of Long Island folks on the team. It's going to be a lot of calf tattoos at Hempstead for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. A lot of jewelry.
A lot of pinky rings on men.
Yeah. A lot of hair gel. Okay. Love you, Long Island. Okay. Let's jump to Princeton Cuse. One of the surprises I didn't mention is Princeton dominated the faceoffs against Towson. It's been their biggest bugaboo all year. If they can get the ball, they can score at a high level. And I think the key for Cuse, again, similar to Richmond, this team's gonna bury you if you Cuse cannot have a lull. It won't be 8-2, it'll be 15-2 against Princeton. So they need to be sharp there. But if you're Cuse, you have this second lease on life. How often do you get to basically lay an egg in the playoffs and then keep going? So I expect Cuse to be kind of shot out of a cannon. And it's really going to come down to the faceoffs for me. Because if Cuse can wear him down offensively, I really do think Cuse plays good offense when they're humming, and Princeton will get worn down a little bit like they did against Cornell. But I would expect this to be a shootout, and it's going to depend massively on Mullen again.
Yeah, I think Mullen is obviously an X factor. I would also, not to keep harping on it, but man, if you foul Princeton, percentage-wise, it's the best man up in America. They haven't had as many opportunities because teams are smart enough to play as clean as possible and not foul them. If you foul Princeton, they're going to score. They go 57% on man up. Only 30 opportunities to go man up this year, but 17 goals on it. They are going to hurt you if you foul them. And if Cuse has this thing where they start ugly or they get a shitty one or a bad penalty here or there, and then every time it happens, you're probably giving up a goal. So, Cuse has to find a way to stay out of the penalty box in this game. And then from there, I think, again, I always try to look at matchup dependent stuff, but Mulshine-Spolina matchup, I think, is one where I would trust Mulshine to win it. It's interesting, Joey as a recruit coming to Syracuse, and you watch some high school tape and stuff like that, there's a lot more of him with a change of direction and then an explosion out of it to beat his guy and feed or attack from X that way and score. I don't know if it's a scheme thing or because he's been playing a lot more box or what, but I feel like you just never see that in his game anymore. I know the defenders are obviously better now than he was seeing in high school, but I can't remember the last time I saw him put a move on somebody and dust somebody and just attack the goal line. You know what I mean? He's much bigger into the just kind of it's not like a jog, but just put your shoulder into somebody and just kind of creep your way up to goal line with your head up, looking around, looking to make a feed. I trust Mulshine to handle that just fine. You know what I mean? He can shove somebody around if you want to play that kind of game with him. So, I don't know if that's a position where I feel strongly if I'm Syracuse that I'm gonna win there. And then I think, Princeton's defensive midfield, as much as kind of their close defense people have maybe maligned this year, Michael Bath is really good. Jackson Green is really good. Like they play they play with a very athletic and physical kind of D midfield unit that I think matches up pretty well with guys like Leo, with guys like Sam English. So, to me, again, I think it starts with like Syracuse. You got to stay out of the box. It's America's best man up. You cannot be fouling like you did against Harvard. You will not win if you do. And then it becomes, where does Syracuse find matchups that they can win individually? Because they haven't been great at doing that. And if they can't find them, well, we finally see an uptick in the amount of two-man and pick game and that kind of stuff. Because for my money, Syracuse still doesn't do enough of it. I don't see enough of like picks for the ball within their offense.
Yeah, if you're not going to win matchups, that's obviously not great, but that's fine. But the ball has to move at like hyper speed, and it's hard when you're not winning matchups because you feel like I have to beat a guy before I move it. But they're struggling. They just have to start whipping it around. Even if it's just around the perimeter, they're slick enough to just whip, and then find somebody on the inside. I think a good thing for Cuse is Finn Thompson's looking pretty healthy and has been better recently. I on their power play especially, like they have a lot of elite passers, and Roa feels like he's going to be big. He basically kept Syracuse afloat in that game. I think he had maybe both the first half goals. He certainly had one or two in the third quarter, just beating his guy and hosing it. When they've struggled this year is when Roa's struggled to shoot a little bit. He's like the one guy who he doesn't really even need to beat his guy. He just gets a step and is such a gifted shooter. So I think he'll be important. Goaltenders, as always, important to the best in the nation this year, Craddock and McCool. Neither of them can get significantly outplayed. Goalies can win you games, but more importantly, they can lose you games too. And I think if your goalie doesn't show up in any of these quarterfinal games, I don't see any of these teams having a chance. Okay, let's shift to Sunday. We'll go Maryland, Georgetown. I would expect this to be the most boring game of the week. This is the sicko game of the week, in my opinion. Because the reason I'm saying that is Georgetown used Maryland's strategy to a T against Duke. Georgetown does the most annoying thing, I think, when the bench guys go 3, 2, 1, 20 to announce the end of the shot clock. I don't know who that helps. And they did it a lot. Like Georgetown rarely shot before 20 seconds, and that's basically what Maryland's been doing all year.
Yeah, and I think it'll be more of that, like plenty more of that. So, I in terms of like a sicko game of the week, it's certainly the one you would pick. I also think like if you're looking for like the one that's maybe ripest for upset might be this one.
Oh,
like the one where the underdog winning would surprise me the least is if Georgetown beat Maryland, I think.
Wow.
Only because of the form Georgetown's in right now.
Yeah.
Like the offense is feeling it, man. And I know like Maryland's defense is really good and they got a great goalie, but like Aiden Carroll is cooking. Aiden Carroll and Will Schaller will be a spectacular matchup. But as we said, Georgetown's finding some depth. Like they're getting timely goals from guys who might not have been superstars for them all year when they were kind of up and down a little bit. And everybody is kind of on their A game right now for Georgetown. So, I think like you kind of look at them and you say the offense might be able to get it done in this game. Only again, not because I'm looking at like talent level and just like in a vacuum being like, it's this many All-Americans versus this many. Like the recent play of Georgetown and the way the ball is moving for them and the way they're shooting right now is certainly of note. And then I think when you do look at matchups, like, there's places on the other end where, Ty Banks is going to erase somebody from Maryland. The question is, I guess, who it is. Like, I guess your mind would immediately go to Spanos, but like, it's like we said about Maryland all year, and what we said about an extent to Ohio State is like taking one guy away from them. Like, cool. Like, it's probably not going to do as much for you as it would against a lot of other teams. There's just too many guys out there who are smart and who execute well and who shoot well. So I think key player for Georgetown will be the goalie. Maryland's going to shoot well. Maryland's a good shooting team. Like if your goalie doesn't have a good day or your goalie starts cold or something like that and you find yourself playing from behind all day against Maryland, then it's not a good spot to be in. exactly where, Tillman and that team is at their most comfortable. So,
well, also Maryland doesn't take enough shots to afford to not shoot well. Like that basically is their formula this year, is like long possessions, only take the best shots, finish them at a high level, which is a Till's staple. He talks about shooting every day. And the goalie's going to be big. Charlie McGurran, number 37, big defender for Georgetown. I thought he was impressive against Duke. He's going to have to play well. The Banks thing is interesting because he was mostly guarding midfielders against Duke, which obviously you have Sloat, Johnston, and Delgado, guys like that. So that made sense. Could you see him slide up to Maryland's midfield? Maybe. Could they short stick Kelly? I think that'll be on the sheet. Like I said, Warren is buddies with the Terps guys. He coached at Maryland. He's still tight with those guys, so he'll have as good a feel for anyone for what Maryland wants to run. But that obviously goes two ways there. So I think it'll be interesting, and we'll see. This one is going to be a slugfest. I think I don't see any way that it's not. Georgetown's hot. It is interesting to your point about momentum. Like Richmond won their tournament. They're super hot, playing the 1 seed. This Georgetown team's super hot, playing the 7 seed. Like Notre Dame's playing like Penn State, which is the game we'll get to next. They're coming off a not pretty bad, but like they took it on the chin in the Big Ten semifinals and then barely got by Colgate. They're kind of limping in, and it is interesting how the just how the momentum shifts there. I don't have anything else on. Should we move to the Penn State game?
Yeah, we can go to Penn State.
Okay.
The Nits?
I believe it's the last game of the weekend. I can't remember the exact order on Sunday. But
Maryland Georgetown's the last game of the weekend.
Okay, so last game, Notre Dame, Penn State. I mean, it feels like you throw out the numbers, right? With Notre Dame, like that's what my first note I had in the Notre Dame from the Notre Dame game last week is Kavanaugh is just like the best playoff performer we've seen in this era of lacrosse, and he just elevated. He was better on Sunday than he was during the regular season, and that's probably a lot of reasons psychologically, physically. He's played a lot of games in his career, all that stuff. So, if Notre Dame looks like they did on Sunday, I don't see anyone that would probably pick against them. Am I missing something?
Yeah, I think obviously if they play like they did on Sunday, I don't think they can lose. We talked before last week's game that it was like, the play of Jake Taylor and his level of involvement is usually kind of a good barometer for how things are going. Like if there's offense that's getting run with him at the end of it and he's getting looks and he's scoring, then that means like the offense is cooking. It's they're not in one of their gross scoring lulls that they can have. And Jake Taylor had a hat trick on 4 shots and an assist against Ohio State.
A really nice assist. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, on having that kind of day and then this kind of the secondary scoring, I don't know, like Chris Reinhardt had a goal. I know it was late, but I think that was his first goal ever at Notre Dame, but he scored it against Ohio State, like in the NCAA tournament. So, do you start kind of finding guys here who are going to help you in the midfield because they kind of need to? But I can't look at Notre Dame right now and be like, man, if Penn State's going to have their number, if they can do X, Y, and Z. As you said, they kind of barely got by Colgate, and that's playing a Colgate team where and I don't mean this is like a knock on them, but because of the way Colgate plays, they can create goals for the opponent sometimes. Penn State got to take a couple of like the beat your ride with a long range goal kind of thing in that game. And even with, Penn State kind of getting goals from Colgate, kind of not gifted to them, but like, helped them to score a little bit. Penn State still only wins that game 13-11. So look, I think you look at the play of Sean Light right now and you say, all right, Matt Trainor's probably going to have a long day. Where else could we go? Who else can create for us? It becomes really important for guys like Kyle Lehman, for guys like Hunter Aquino to find a way to win a matchup, to be productive and put pressure on a defense that people are really having a hard time with right now. Yeah,
it feels like this is going to have to be a rock fight, low scoring for Penn State. If Notre Dame gets 15, no chance for the Nittany Lions. They got to find ways to get Trainer open. It'll be interesting what Light does because Trainer's not an initiator like most teams' best players are. But Schwitzenberg is like, not that far behind Light. So they have two elite cover guys, and Richard Deli is hot right now as well. The nice thing for Penn State is Colgate is like no other team you'll see all year, right? The face-offs and a unique offense that's very talented, and the 10-man. Notre Dame is a straight-up lacrosse team. They're not doing anything too crazy. They're talented. They're basically the when you look up like what straight up lacrosse looks like, it's Notre Dame. They're gonna punch you in the mouth repeatedly, but at least Penn State knows like what's coming. It's gonna be kind of like a Big Ten type game. So if you're Penn State, you're saying, okay, we've been in a tougher conference. Like even if it's not better teams, tougher. It's a like literally tougher conference. We've had rock fights with Maryland and Ohio State and Rutgers and all this stuff, and we're going to grind these guys out. It'll be a huge Penn State crowd, being relatively close to Philly and all that good stuff. And they have tons of Philly players, tons of Maryland guys down there. But this is like silly because I spend most of my time looking at their numbers, but I was looking at like Matt and Pat Kavanaugh's Instagram stories, and you just see Chris, how fired up he is coming off the field at the end of the game. And you're just like, you just don't feel good about it if you're Penn State. You're just like this is a crazy person, and Corgan's a crazy person, and we're stepping in front of a train that's starting to pick up momentum again. So it's the playoffs. Nothing it could happen. Notre Dame got humbled against Cuse, and Penn State's defense is good. Jack Frack gonna have to be good. Penn State has in Parham and Ross, two elite cover guys as well. So do we see one of those guys slide up away from McLean and Taylor? Do we see something junky? Do we see a shorty on McLean and a shorty on Taylor? It's all part of the kind of the game plan here. And whoever takes Chris, you got to be up.
Yeah, and I think you have to have a plan for the storm. At some point,
you cannot give a ride back goal. You cannot give him a goal. Don't hit Chris in the head either.
Yes. Do not do the Incredible Hulk thing. Like you wouldn't like him when he's angry. Like do not give him a reason to turn into the Hulk. But Notre Dame's going to have a run. Like as much as a thing with them this year has been like they have these ugly scoring lulls, they also have. They end those lulls with spectacular 5-goal runs. Yeah. And they're going to have one. They have one against everybody. Yeah. So you need to have your team prepared emotionally for what's going to happen when, Notre Dame goes goal, and then the third one is Chris Kavanaugh dusting somebody and roofing one, and the whole place is screaming. You need to be ready for what that's going to to be like.
Yeah, whatever the over-under is on the amount of times Mrs. Kavanaugh is going to be shown on the broadcast, if it's over that, if it goes over, Notre Dame's going to win. That's how it works. If you let Chris get going, the whole family gets on the broadcast, they start throwing the mom up in the air. That's bad news for Penn State. And for Notre Dame fans, that's pretty much just clicking restart on the best movie you've ever watched. So I can't imagine how much fun that must have been as a Notre Dame fan to watch that game and be like, oh, they thought we had to go on the road. People picked Ohio State in this game. Ohio State was nasty.
I've never been so happy to not be in the same room as Nick Casello.
Yes.
I would also say face off in this game. Colby Baldwin for Penn State has been good. I think it was either his worst or his second to worst game of the year came against Jack Goldman and Ohio State, and Will Lynch just went 74% against Jack Goldman. So,
Baldwin's been hurt too. So they have this other kid.
They've had Mullins going, and they've had
the other guy's name is L something.
Reed Gills.
Yeah, and Gills has been good. He took all of them against Colgate. So I don't know the injury status on Baldwin if he'll be back, but it's a little bit because Gills has been really good. It's a little bit like Luke Weirman-esque. It's who's this freaking guy? It's just
who's this dude?
And the thing that's important about faceoff guys too is is they're like, it's like carries for a running back. It's like, this guy's fresh. This guy hasn't been getting beat up all year. Will Lynch has been getting his butt kicked for 4 years. Not like beat kicked, but like Will Lynch has been in the fight for a long time now. So yeah, that's going to be big. We talked about it already. Aside from Richmond, who actually did pretty well against Wambach, the first teamer, none of the other games last week were even within the 50s in terms of differential. If you lose 60 or more in the quarterfinals, I don't see any of these teams that could come back from that.
No. The only one where I think it would even be possible to me is I could see Syracuse, I could see Johnny Mullen going over 60 and Princeton winning. I think that's possible.
Yeah.
But in the rest of them, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. That I agree. I'm gonna rescind my statement.
Johnny Mullen goes 70%. Yeah. Syracuse commits 10 fouls, and they lose 16-13.
Hey, if you're a politician listening to this, that's compromise. That's how that works. Dan made a good point.
Oh man,
we're solving all the world's problems, not just we solved the world's biggest problem, which was not enough lacrosse podcasts. And, now we're moving on to polarization. So good for us. Okay. I think that's probably a good time to end it.
That's a good note.
Yeah, we're getting into the delirium zone. So, you are going to Hempstead on Saturday. I will be squarely planted on my couch. Go Big Red. And, looking forward to it.
Can't wait. A lot of good D2 and D3 ball to watch.
Yeah.
Okay. Catch that too.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. That was episode 15 of the College Lacrosse Show.
We'll see ya.